Well, good afternoon, and thank you for sparing a little bit of time during your lunch hour to join us for a short webinar on how to complete your SRA self-assessment and some information on the problems that the new competency statement are going to cause you over the next year. Of solicitors hadn't actually started to do anything at all. We spoke to a number of insurance companies, and they are very aware of the impact that non-compliance will have on solicitors in respect of their considerations whether or whether not to reinsure solicitors' practices who haven't complied with the new competency statement. And this is something that will come into effect on their renewal. And as for the poor practice managers, 80% of them feel anxious about how to deal with this problem. So what are the consequences of non-compliance? Well, the SRA can refuse to issue a practicing certificate. The SRA can take remedial action against the solicitor concerned. Insurance companies could refuse to offer insurance completely. And of course, as we all know, failure to monitor solicitors' compliance under this new regime could have serious consequences for the COLP. The SRA have not been particularly clear and specific as to how solicitors should approach this difficult task. And here at DataLaw, we have spent probably in excess of 12 months gathering as much information as we can, speaking to people in the Solicitors Regulation Authority, and determining the best way forward for you and your solicitor's practice. So, what does this new competency statement mean to each solicitor, and how has it changed from what we're used to? Well, before the rules changed, all the solicitor really had to do was 16 CPD hours in almost any area of law that they felt was relevant, or indeed almost anything that they thought that was relevant as long as it was accredited. So towards the end of October, you'd often get criminal law solicitors doing conveyancing courses because they couldn't fit in everything that they needed to do in a year. And this was one of the reasons why the SRA decided to make these changes, because they felt that reasonably worthless training for a particular individual crammed into the last 10 days of a CPD year wasn't what they wanted. And so they've now introduced an ongoing form of learning which requires solicitors to reflect on their planned learning every month, or indeed every quarter. And they've split what solicitors need to demonstrate that they learn into 4 different areas. The first is ethics, professionalism and judgement. The second is technical legal practice. The third is working with other people. And the fourth is managing themselves and their own work. And from now on, you are going to have to reflect on your practice to identify any learning needs that you think you may have. You then need to plan how you will address your learning needs. Then you have to execute the plan by completing the learning activities. Having done that, you need to evaluate how the learning activity has met the learning need you identified. And then you have to record how you've carried out this process, and you have to keep doing that on at least a quarterly basis. Okay. So how can data law help you with these particular new requirements that you have? Well, to answer that question, I'm going to pass you over to Angela Mcgreal, who is going to talk to you about what to do next.
Hi, my name is Angela Mcgreal. I'm in charge of the implementation of our learning management system across the business and for data law clients. What we here at Data Law have done to make this process easier is developed a set of rules following the SRA's own key competency statement areas, making the new process manageable and easy to follow. Because let's face it, you have enough work to do as it is. So all of your key areas are your reflection, plan, develop and record. So first of all, reflection. The SRA recommends quarterly reviews at least, so we've created a simple self-assessment tool allowing you to reflect on your current competency, which brings me to your next step, plan. Your completed self-assessment generates a unique personal development plan based on your answers. And develop, now that you've done the basics, it's time to start acting on your identified areas. We provide access to over 600 courses on demand, which are integrated within your training plan in order to develop, maintain, and build on your competence, with new courses and updates being added throughout the year by our expert speakers. And finally, to record. Documentation is a big part of your SRA evidence, so all of your steps are tracked automatically for you. Your training summary and SRA statement of competence allows you to quickly print your progress for any evidence that you might need. At this point, we're going to switch over to a screen share for my colleague Sean to walk us through the self-assessment. Rest assured, these next steps here will be shared with you online later via video and documentation, just in case you'd like to go back over it.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Angela. So before we move on to the screen share, just want to talk about where we are within this webinar and what we've covered so far. The learning objectives covered so far are how the SRA changes affect you, what to know about the SRA changes, and how data law can help you at the SRA changes. Now I'm going to go through a screen share of the system and how you can take your SRA self-assessment. For the purposes of this webinar, we are going to assume that you have already registered with Data Law. If you haven't already registered with us, you can click on the sign up button on the top right and fill out the details needed. To take your self-assessment, first click on the sign in link at the top right corner. Then enter the email and password you registered with. Once you are logged in, go to the top right hand corner and select the black drop down arrow. Then select the third option down, labelled Training Plan. Once you have entered the training plan page, click on the button labelled Take Your Self-Assessment. Now you will be presented with 23 multiple choice SRA assessment questions. The purpose of these questions is to allow you to effortlessly reflect on your training needs. You will need to read the questions carefully and select the option for each that best reflects your current status. If you get stuck on a question and need some guidance on what you are being asked to reflect upon, select the link to the bottom right hand side labelled Why is this important to the SRA? A box will then appear that will give you a brief insight into what the question is asking in regards to the SRA. Once you've finished the self-assessment, you will be generated a custom training plan and SRA competency statement. Your training plan is created based upon the options that you selected. The training plan comes complete with a reflections column, your statement to the SRA in regards to your training needs and reflection, an action column, a progress column, and a notes column. Once you've reviewed your training plan, you can start to make progress on your action items by clicking on the Go to Course button. For each suggested action item, you will be taken directly to the most relevant and up-to-date CPD course. From here, you can see how easy it is to get on-demand CPD training. Any time spent on the relevant course will automatically be tracked and updated in the progress column in your training plan. A quick side note worth mentioning is that your training plan works best with our new Access All Areas subscription. This is a rolling monthly subscription with no contract that for just £49 a month gives you unlimited on-demand access to over 600 CPD courses. If you're not subscribed to our Access All Areas membership and you have not previously purchased the course, then it's not a problem. Simply click on the Go to Course button and you'll be directed to the course information and purchase page. The final feature I want to talk about is the Add a Training Note button in the additional notes column. If there is another way that you've met your training needs for the question provided, then this is a really handy way for you to add additional evidence for the SRA. To add a note, select the Add a Training Note button. From here, a box will pop up. Select the training type, enter a date and the volume of hours of training that you've done. Below you will see a text box where you can provide any additional information on that training item. All the notes can be viewed, edited and deleted by selecting the buttons below the note. Once you've completed your training plan and you're ready to use it as evidence for the SRA, it can be easily printed off by selecting the print button at the top of the page.
Great, thanks for that, Sean. Now, just before we move on to the Q&A, let's just summarise what we've covered so far. First, Charles covered how the SRA affects you. For example, the impact this will have on insurance renewals. Then, we covered what you need to know about the SRA changes. This involved the 4 key areas and the importance of ongoing quarterly reflection. After this, I talked briefly about how we can help you here at Datalaw. And finally, Sean went through taking the self-assessment and showed you some of the great features our system has, such as the additional notes for SRA evidencing, and just how easy it is to go from your training plan to take on-demand relevant CPD courses. And now moving on to the Q&A.
Right, Charles, so the first question that we've got in here is, on average, how long does it take to complete point there, you know.
Hello everyone, apologies, we just had a few technical issues with our microphone there, so I'm just going to go back over some of the questions that we've had and cover some of the answers that I've gone through as well.
So somebody's asked us, how important is the self-assessment?
The self-assessment is very important. That's actually step one of complying with the SRA's competency statement, which became mandatory in November 2016. So that will allow you to sort of assess and review your own current competence and demonstrate your own competency, as well as document that evidence that you've actually come across based on the answers that you give to the questions.
Okay, someone else has asked, can this be used for individuals or is it just for law firms?
Yeah, good question as well. So it can be used for both individuals and law firms. There's different levels of access that each of those users will get. So as an individual, you'll get your own personal CPD tracker. You'll also get your own personal training dashboard so you can see exactly what's going on. You'll get your personal self-assessment for generating your personal development plan. So all of those things will give you visibility in terms of where you're up to versus the requirements under the new SRA competency statements. Now for a law firm, if you've got a firm membership, then you will receive the full practice manager access, so you'll get the admin rights on there. What that means is that you'll receive a full firm overview, so you'll get a breakdown in terms of where each of your individual members are up. You'll be able to drill into their individual performance as well. You'll be able to quickly identify if anybody is sort of standing out and causing particular risk by being behind, and just check out the saturation of training to see if there's any other areas that you'd particularly like to be focusing on. Those are just a few things.
Somebody has asked, we all know that the SRA have been a little bit cagey about exactly what the requirements are for solicitors. So somebody's asked us, how do I know that all of my needs are covered for the SRA requirements?
Yeah, really good question. So the self-assessment has been designed and incorporates all of the SRA's own key competency statement areas, so all of the areas that they require. Those questions that you follow would then generate your personal development plan with those needs in mind. So it'll cover all of your additional areas that you need, like things like your personal skills and development now, your regulatory, perhaps management level courses, all of those important areas, as well as your general areas of law. But you'll still be able to look at things like, you've got a client meeting coming up and you need to brush up on a bit of knowledge. You can dip into the full data part of that as well.
And here's a question from a busy solicitor, if there is such a thing. How long does the self-assessment usually take?
Yeah, really, really quick. It's multiple choice, so there's 23 questions in total. Just make sure you're reviewing them and answering those honestly, because that will form your personal development plan, which can't be changed. So honest answers all the way through. Maximum it should really be taking you is 5 minutes. If you're really going through and reading through everyone individually and maybe having a few breaks to digest the details, 10 minutes as a super maximum.
Okay, well that's not too bad, is it? And finally, we're getting a number of questions about how much does this all cost?
Yeah, so down to brass taxes, the self-assessment tool is actually free to use, so any individual can get that anyway. Now, if you were to receive access to all of the training library as well, so that supports the areas that are highlighted off the back of your self-assessment, that starts from just £49 plus VAT per month for an individual user. So you can do that on a monthly rolling, ongoing basis. So it's just continuous payments for continuous competence now, really. Firm memberships, that works slightly differently. The normal standard pricing starts from £199 plus VAT for a firm of up to 10 users. Now, we can actually offer some bespoke pricing as a benefit of you attending this webinar. So if anybody would like bespoke pricing and a bit more detail, just shout up in the comments here and I'll make sure some more info's over to you on email.
Right, well that seems to be the end of the questions. So I'll give it another couple of seconds, see if anybody else needs to ask anything else.
Okay.
No? Well, that just allows me to thank you all for coming. I think Angela
Thank you,
will probably
everyone.
be in touch with you, and I hope you've enjoyed the webinar.